Hello there. We've had a figurative earthquake in the Middle East, with the Assad regime essentially no more. Where is Bashar al Assad? Asks the BBC. Well, they're saying he stepped down as president and left Syria. His ally Russia says hours after rebel forces took control of the capital Damascus. The Russian foreign ministry gave no further details about Assad's whereabouts, but it was the first official statement saying he had left the country. Assad has not been pictured since he met Iranian foreign minister in Damascus a week ago. That day he vowed to crush the rebels, seizing territory with dizzying speed. Early on Sunday morning, after the fighters entered the city without resistance, the Islamist militant group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, and its allies declared that the tyrant Bashar al-Assad has fled. The head of the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, SOHR, a UK-based monitoring group, also reported that a plane believed to be carrying Assad left Syria via Damascus International Airport before the army security forces left. Now, on the BBC, they said that there have been no reports of a plane crash after his plane essentially stopped responding, but it seems as though it might be a crash after all. This is from the Middle East Monitor, but there have been a lot of outlets, including mainstream outlets, that have been mirroring this story. Assad missing amid rumors of plane crash after fall of Damascus to rebels. It says here that the opposition factions are interrogating military and intelligence officials for information on al-Assad's whereabouts, sources told CNN. Speculation about al-Assad's fate intensified after reports of an Ilyushin 76 aircraft suspected of carrying him departing Damascus airport just before the city fell. According to Axios, the plane headed northwest, lowered its altitude near Homs, which is a city in Syria, and then disappeared from radar after making an abrupt course change. The Britain-based, we already heard that. So it says here that Reuters cited two Syrian sources suggesting a high probability that the aircraft crashed, potentially ending al-Assad. It disappeared off the radar, possibly the transporter was switched off, but I believe the bigger probability is that the aircraft was taken down, one source stated. The opposition's Military Operation Administration announced the president's escape early today, declaring Damascus free of his rule and calling on Syrians worldwide to return to a free Syria. Quote, after 50 years of oppression under al-Ba'ath and 13 years of crimes, tyranny, and displacement, we announced the end of this dark era and the beginning of a new age for Syria, the statement read. So it says here that a separate Syrian air flight reportedly left Homs for the United Arab Emirates hours after the opposition's capture of the city, but no connection to the Assad family has been confirmed. The search for his fate and the circumstances surrounding the plane's disappearance remain unresolved. So, we don't know what's going on yet other than the militants are victorious. We don't know much about who they are other than they have very good corporate public speakers, let's say. If you watched my video from a couple of days ago, then you know. We also know one more thing. They were probably armed by the US government. So this is the Los Angeles Times from 2016. In Syria, militias armed by the Pentagon fight those armed by the CIA. I'm not kidding, this is not some right-wing rag, this is a mainstream left-wing newspaper. Reporting from Amman, Jordan, Syrian militias armed by different parts of the US war machine have begun to fight each other on the plains between the besieged city of Aleppo and the Turkish border, highlighting how little control US intelligence officers and military planners have over the groups they have financed and trained in the bitter 5-year-old civil war. So that was like 8 years ago. The probability is that these rebels have been financed and armed by some arm of the US government. That just seems likely to me. And they may well be once again trying their nation building and democracy spreading plans that have failed abysmally every single time. Like in Libya, like in Iraq, like in Afghanistan. Every single time it leaves a ruined nation instead of some sort of democratic republic. Now, that said, I think this time is a bit different because there are no Western forces in play, no armed forces, destroying the old regime and trying to enact a puppet government. Instead, they presumably armed their favorite candidate and his allies and essentially let them take over. This probably also happened because Russia was out of the picture, too busy fighting NATO in Ukraine, to support Assad, like Trump says, and this is what he said yesterday before the fall of Damascus and the end of the Assad regime. Opposition fighters in Syria, in an unprecedented move, have totally taken over numerous cities in a highly coordinated offensive, and are now on the outskirts of Damascus, obviously preparing to make a very big move toward taking out Assad. Russia, because they are so tied up in Ukraine, and with the loss there of over 600,000 soldiers, seems incapable of stopping this literal march through Syria, a country they have protected for years. This is where the former President Obama refused to honor his commitment of protecting the red line in the sand, and all hell broke out with Russia stepping in. But now they are, like possibly Assad himself, forced out, and it may actually be the best thing that can happen to them. There was never much of a benefit in Syria for Russia, other than to make Obama look really stupid. In any event, Syria is a mess, but it's not our friend, and the United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight, let it play out, do not get involved. Trump once again says no new wars, he's being isolationist, and essentially, since Russia is ousted from there, it's not as though there is a competing world hegemon trying to spread influence and isolate the United States. He can let it go and just allow Syria to return to the hands of the people, although I am kind of pessimistic about the future of the country, because as bad as Assad was, just like Gaddafi, who was very bad in Libya, the cure ended up being worse than the disease. It might be the same here too. Assad was a secular leader, and he protected minorities because he essentially depended on them to support his rule, and in return he protected them from the Muslim fanatics, minorities like Christians, for example, and they might be in dire straits with a more religious and militant faction taking over. There have been so many minorities that are, either being ended on a massive scale or at least pushed out in the Middle East since, essentially religious zealotry took over. We've seen Jews, Christians, Yazidis, Armenians, Kurds, all sorts, many other minorities just disappearing. People who lived here for generations, religious groups that lived in the Middle East for hundreds, perhaps even more, thousands of years, just gone due to fanaticism for Islamic militants. And I'm not saying that everyone's like that. I know that a lot of people aren't like that in the Middle East, but there are enough religious militants among the Muslims, and they are in positions of power to cause this tragic state of events. Is it going to be the same way in Syria? I don't know. They seem to be speaking about diversity, like I said, very corporal speech. Are they actually going to follow through and allow these people to live unimpeded in their countries, the homelands they've been raised in and where they live their entire lives? Or are they going to persecute them for being the wrong religion? I don't know. I hope they don't. I hope that things become peaceful. I hope that it becomes a well-functioning and, how to put it? I don't expect it to become a Western democracy, and I don't want them to uphold the diversity that the West seems to be practicing, where basically the people on the left prefer foreigners, even hostile and violent ones, to their own people, just on the basis of racism and sexism, essentially. But no, sexism is not about foreigners. It is something they do against men, but never mind. Still, there is definitely something to be said for them, the people in the Middle East, especially in Syria right now, being tolerant enough of different groups to not be violent with them. I think that's a very low bar, but it might still be beyond them. As for my own country, I'm honestly not sure whether to be happy or sad about it. I mean, is Syria going to be a more or less peaceful neighbor now? Presumably more peaceful. They're going to be too busy with their own trouble, and also because Assad was an ally of Iran, and Iran is our biggest enemy right now, presumably this would be good news, hopefully. We'll see how it plays out. I will keep you all posted and monitor this story, because I think living in the Middle East, I am a bit closer to the pulse of it than people who live in Europe or the USA. Thanks for watching, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.